So the Melbourne scenario. Simon Goodwin talks this morning. It's Friday night over in the West against Fremantle. Are you throwing your lot in with the Ds or not? We'll work our way through our morning. Patrick Dangerfield is going to join me, but we start Tuesdays with Nathan Buckley. Nathan, welcome.
G'day, Gerard.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, mate. I've got some cake here. Do you want some?
It's a homemade chocolate cake.
From who?
Claire.
Who's home?
She made that for you.
Your wife?
Yeah, yep.
That is amazing. I'm going to eat that now.
I told her I'm not sure you're a chocolate cake guy, but we're doing it nonetheless.
If the problem with me is once I have one piece, I want the whole cake. So I reckon I might eat it all. Actually, no, I want to be sharing it. So that's all good. Thank you.
It's a milestone. What does 50 mean to you?
Well, look, it means it's pretty scary, to be honest, like how quickly the years go. I've never been a big birthday guy, but I'm definitely feeling the love from family and friends. And but yeah, when you reflect on the number, it's a little bit scary, and obviously your mortality a little bit when people, when you lose people around you or in your sphere or even in the sport, and their numbers aren't necessarily that far from where my number is. So I think I just appreciate life a lot more now than I ever have.
And so. It does strike me. So when you're a sportsman and when you're high profile, so you see a lot of images of your old self.
Yeah.
Obviously on high rotation, there's when you're 20 winning a Magarey medal.
Yeah.
Not a lot of us have to look at images of our younger selves and contrast. How does that strike you?
Well, it feels like a different person, to be honest. I gave a talk yesterday and generally what happens as you're introed is you go through the honour roll of the things you've achieved as a player. And my playing career, like you go through deaths as a death of a sort. So I died as a player in 2007 at 35 years of age. So that career was done. And it does feel like a part of you dies, a part of you is gone. So I've been through that and then obviously with the coaching stuff finishes, and it's sort of there's little parts of you that sort of they're no longer lay dormant. They're sort of put to rest. So looking back at stuff is it's confronting, but it's a reality. We all, but as you said, it's probably a little bit more visual to me because there's representations of who you once were.
I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Where are you on Melbourne?
I think clearly you can't ignore their performances against the better teams this year and the fact that they've fallen short, in 5 of those games, where at the same stage last year it was 7-1. So that is the reality. And the challenge for Melbourne, I think, is largely psychological. That's not assuming that their best is the best. We know that from 12 months ago, but 12 months ago is irrelevant. I see it as a psychological challenge. So does Simon Goodwin say, everyone is holding us to the high watermark of last year? And if everyone else is, that's fine, as long as they're not.
Yep. Because
they're setting themselves up for failure if you are comparing even your performance now to the high watermark that you set last year. Because I don't think 100 points in a quarter and a half in a grand final is a watermark that can be reached again. Really, realistically, it's going to be very difficult to do. So you're going to fall short if that is your expectation. And that's the word, expectation can be the killer. So it's up in Melbourne to work out now whether they're looking backwards and trying to compare themselves against what they were, or there needs to be something so compelling for now and in their next 7 or 8 weeks that is that compelling that their focus is laser focus on what they have in front of them, not on a comparison on what they were. And that's easier said than done.
Is there some relevance in so this is where they sharpened last year? They did wobble through July's, the corresponding 4 games, different opponents. This is where they zeroed right in with that laser focus.
Yeah.
Is that something you can draw on without the watermark being part of it?
Well, potentially, but just because something has been done before doesn't mean it can be done again. Like there's even if you have the same names, you're 12 months on, you've shared that experience. Some people might become complacent. Other people become more anxious about the responsibility of having to back up on something that they're not that confident that they can do it again. Maybe things have changed in their lives. They might not be as happier outside of the football club or outside of the game, which impacts everyone with other areas of your life. So there's a lot of things that are immeasurables that we can't quantify. And that's the challenge. You've got to make hay while the sun shines and take your moments when you get them. And Melbourne did that. On any estimation, they did that and they had that success. They've driven themselves on this basis of coming back and doing it in front of their faithful. But there's even an assumption in that. But it isn't. It's still aspirational, and the aspiration can still be achieved if it's compelling enough and if they earn it. But, as always happens, we set this up as a media. We set this up as a football community with an expectation that Melbourne are that far in front of everyone. And now we're somewhat surprised that there's other contenders. There's been a lot of water go under the bridge since Melbourne won that flag. There's a lot of things that can change, and there's a lot of things that can be built. And there's some perennial achievers that are there and around the mark, and there's some new boys on the block that want to take their piece of the pie.
Do you think, is Melbourne, so let's take the subjective outside view, are they a little bit less than you would have thought? They're a little bit less than I would have imagined. They still have time to grow into that. That this 4 weeks, I feel like they'll be declared by the time they get to the finals. If they do find that laser focus and their best remains the best, we'll progressively see that across 4 weeks. I think we'll probably get to the finals and go, yeah, well, if you're going to win it, you're going to have to go through them. Or they might lose their place in the top 4 through these 3 games because of they become 8-point swings.
Yeah, I think that generally the most recent form is your best guide. Like in any time where you're looking at an opposition, you look at the last time you played them, but if that's 12 months ago, that may or may not be significant. But you look at their last 4 games, and that's enough of a guide to how they're playing, what's working for them and what's not, and slight shifts in style or opportunities that you might believe, okay, this is an area of weakness in their game that we want to sort of press and see if we can squeeze a bit. You've got to look at the most recent stuff with Melbourne, and they are missing key players more than they were missing key players early in the year. If you recall, they basically had 3 or 4 of their premiership defence out in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and they won most of those games. It wasn't until the second half against Fremantle where the cracks started appearing, and that was about round 8 or 9, I think. It was a little
11,
bit later. So that, remember we sort of go, well, that made them look gettable. And belief is crucial in this. So if the other sides believe they're gettable and the competition believes they're gettable now, then that makes it harder for Melbourne to just float through and do what they do at a 7 out of 10. They need to get back to an 8 or a 9 out of 10. They have that capacity. But I'd suspect that we're going to get to finals and Melbourne will be a contender, but I don't think they'll clear themselves out again. And I think we'll go in and there will be games where Melbourne will go in and they might be the underdog or they might be even money. But I think they'll still be in the mix. They've still got too much of a connection, too much history. They've reached a level that not many have got to, and that still is whilst it can be a rod in their back, it can also be the thing that lifts them.
I got one other element, and it's all theoretical, right? But they're getting everybody's best. I don't know whether they're giving their best. So I look at them at the moment, and the clips that have been run, they were out hunted by Geelong, they were outrun by the Bulldogs. Are they giving their absolute best at the moment to meet the best that's coming at them? So that's where I think the sliding scale is in the back end. And then I look at it and go, are you totally bought in to this? Luke Jackson's hedging to go elsewhere. Angus Brayshaw is evidently taking meetings about being somewhere else next year. The issue around premiership players, non-premiership players, which at least on one night flared, are they totally maniacally bought into it and it's July. This is where I think the upside is.
Yeah, and
Meet their best with your absolute best.
Yeah, and I think that can still be done. Like say we project forward and Melbourne, the season 22's run and done. Luke Jackson goes, Brayshaw goes. That doesn't mean that between now and then can't be brilliant. And I think the challenge is to say, like, everything changes. Nothing stays the same. So when you're in this moment with this group of players, with this opportunity, but the reality was that's exactly the line that Simon Goodwin went with last week. This is our time. And I think that's what he was trying. And just because they lost the Bulldogs doesn't mean that that's not appropriate or it's not impactful, because you might not get an automatic response. But if you believe, if enough people believe that, if enough of the group believe that, well, then they've got the capacity to do it. We may never be in this situation again with this group of players. In fact, you can almost say we definitely will not be in this situation with this group of players and these people on and off the field again. So we need to give everything that we've got to now, because we know in a couple of months' time it's not going to be the same. That becomes a driving force, and that's what they need to tap into.
Are you throwing your lot in with Melbourne or not? 0433 98 11 16. Temper a mattress like no other. We'll take some calls as our morning unfolds. Kane Lambert's retirement yesterday. So this is one of those, I reckon, that you would have seen it because you would have studied teams and plotted against them. Richmond fans would know it. My impression from the outside is, first, Richmond was always better when Lambert played, and that Dusty was Dusty because of Kane Lambert.
There's no doubt about that. And the Talladega Nights fans would know, but I reckon Kane Lambert is the Cal Norton Jr. to Dustin Martin's Ricky Bobby.
Nice.
He's the Luigi to Dusty's Mario. He's the Robin to Batman. Like, they were a tag team. We ended up through 18. We felt like we had something that was going to unpack them. And that was how we treated, not just how we treated Dustin, but how we treated Kane Lambert. We needed to tag him. We needed to run with him and not allow him the space and time, which is easier said than done because he was a running machine. He is a running machine.
Yep.
But what he was able to do for that organisation was enormous. So he played VFL for 4 years. In the third VFL year, he won the Fothergill Round Medal, which these are the other players who won it: Bailey Fritsch, Luke Ryan, Hibbard, Barlow, Nahas, Riccardi, Newman, amongst others. He was the only one of that crew that won it and didn't get picked up on an AFL list the next year. So he moved to Willie and then got picked up at the end of 2014, played with Richmond from 15, has put a career together and been a part of enormous team success and been a strong part of it in my estimations. So he would come up from the forward line and basically play as a midfielder to allow Dusty to go to stoppages and then play in the front half. And not very many people played that role. Shane Edwards played it periodically. And now Jaden Short has played it for a little bit this year at times. Have a look at the bloke Shai Bolton's played a little bit. So have a look at the bloke that's at the top of the forward 50 for Richmond. And if Dusty's in the midfield, he's the guy playing that role. Well, they're probably trying to disguise it a little bit more than that, yep. But that's pretty much what Kane Lambert did, and he had a massive impact for that club. And it sort of makes you wonder, so when these guys come through and they've been sitting in the VFL for a little while, Myercheck, Tom Atkins, why can't we pick them a little bit more? But you just don't know how guys are going to respond to the AFL environment. And there's a reason why they're not picked up, but there's also a reason that they succeed when they get there. And half the time it's just opportunity.
What was that role called in your setup?
It was actually called a Mario.
Yep.
So it was a 6 forward or a Mario or a Rogue. There's different names that they'll have, that the clubs will have, and some of it will have a connection to the bigger theme of the year or of a style of play. So that was for Kane. He was pretty significant. He was probably one of the first. He probably took it to another level because that high forward position can be starvation corner a little bit. A lot of defensive work, a lot of position, running the lines rather than sort of getting to the ball. But he was able to do both. He was able to stay off-ball running to get dangerous in the front half and lengthen to score, and would regularly kick his 1, 2 or 3, or actually outnumber at the contest. And he made those decisions as well as anyone. And we see high forwards now, it can be, if you get 12 to 15 touches and kick a goal or set one up, you've played your role really well. He was regularly getting 25s and kicking a couple, and that was a profound influence and contribution to his team. And 3 times premiership player.
Yeah. The other part of it is going to be he's going to be a touchstone for the cost of the game. So his hip is chronic. He's going to need a hip replacement. And yesterday we sort of learnt a few things that he can't do. So he can't get to his toes anymore. He struggles to get in and out of cars. So that the physical sacrifice and the toll that is part of it is very much part of his story.
Yeah, I think we're a lot better at it as an organiser, as a culture, as a sport than we were in the past. We definitely, and I think society in general is, our level of resilience, used to be jump. All right, how high? That doesn't happen anymore. It's like, okay, where do you want me to jump? How do you want me to jump? 1 leg, 2. Why am I jumping? Like there's a lot of that going on at the moment.
Why am I jumping?
Yeah, why am I jumping? What's my motivation? How's this going to impact everyone else? So it's just like, okay, so that's where we've moved into. And as a sort of carry on from that, we are looking after the welfare, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, of the people in our sport, in the AFL community, better than we were in the past, in the short term. Because sometimes maybe we lack a little bit resilience, and that maybe creates a rod for our back down the track. But for Kane Lambert, physically, he's paid a price. But I think that something might have been in his makeup that was building through VFL and through his junior days, and then eventually it gives in. Something gives up. Because otherwise you just play forever.
Yep.
But it's unfortunate. It is a sacrifice and it is a reality. And some players probably cop more of their physical challenges than they're due. They can be unlucky, and others can be more on the lucky side. But very rarely are you going to have a long elite sporting career in any endeavour and not have some form of physical cost to pay going forward.
The correction is the most highly conditional correction that I can think of. Ginnivan is responsible for the initial high contact, it reads. So I can't see it that way. But who am I to say? Nathan Buckley, what's your view?
Well, I don't agree with that in that instance. In that particular contest, I don't think that the comment by the AFL that was the prelude to saying that it wasn't the right decision, I don't think that's accurate. They're entitled to their opinion, whoever they are, whether it's Brad Scott or whether it's the umpiring department or, it's a faceless person. It's the AFL. But I think one thing that's consistent, and Craig didn't and potentially couldn't answer the question that you posed to him. He answered it in a different way. But I thought that, I think what happens with the AFL is it seems to me like it becomes very difficult for them to just own something when it doesn't quite stack up the way that they would like it to stack up. If we just accept that there's human error in everything, and when there was a couple of dissent calls that was like, okay, well, no, there's no level on dissent. Well, there clearly is a level on dissent, but there was a double down in that earlier in the year, and we're just owning it and saying, well, we understand that there is a threshold, and if you go over that threshold, we'll be really clear. We give it to the umpire's discretion to assess that in the moment, because every moment's going to be different. This one, it's just an umpiring error, and that might be based on the environment of the time. It might be based on Jack Ginnivan. It might be based on the cues that they've coached the umpires to look for. It might just be an error, and it's probably more likely that it's a combination of all. But to come out and say that the player contributed to it when he didn't, then I think it betrays the confidence of people, of good football people, that see that and go, well, no, that's not accurate. And I wonder how far you can do that before you lose good people support in that instance.
Just say it was wrong.
Yeah.
And so this is where it is very specifically about Jack Ginnivan. Because if that's any other player, it doesn't need the rider. But because it's Ginnivan, and because if we're really honest, this is all happening because of him, and we've had a rule adjustment because of it or a tightening because of it. No, we can't just accept that. Oh, we got his one wrong.
We're talking about a player who's played 20 games of footy. And we were talking about a player that had played 5 games of footy and 6 games of footy and then 9 games of footy. There hasn't been a player, and I've been banging on about it, but his name is coming out of my mouth, and it's disproportionate, and it is. If he was a lesser character, he might be more greatly affected by it. But he seems. I know. I've spent half a season with him, a pre-season and half a season. He's a happy kid. He's a good kid. He is respectful. He's cheeky. He has a crack. He plays the game, and he's loving the. There's part of him that would love the attention and welcomes it because he doesn't shy away from the big moments and the scrutiny. If he was anyone other than that, one, he wouldn't be who he is, but two, he might be struggling with this sort of attention. But he just gets about his business, and we're seeing the best of him, and he's going to grow and develop, and he'll be like. Blink your eyes, in 4 years' time, if he's still in the league, he'll be a very different player from what he is now, because he'll have to have developed to become something more than he is to maintain his contribution to the team. That's the way it rolls. But we're just so myopic. We're so tunnel visioned on what we see, and we judge people on what we want to see, not what they are.
I felt like it affected him on Sunday.
Did you?
Yep, I did. Just watching the game and watching his lack of influence, and I think it would have been a dispiriting moment. And I don't think you'd be human if you didn't feel it.
Yeah,
really?
I accept that, and I understand that, and you're probably right, because in the end, he's going through a period of, okay, so I've approached the contest in this way, and that's been the outcome. Now it's changing. The interpretation is changing. It's not just for him; it's for everyone else as well. But yes, he would feel it. And then that happens early in the game. And it's quite clearly an aggressive act by Redmond as well. Like Redmond was taking advantage of that, which is fine because I don't mind that as a competitor. Okay, if I'm going to get a free hit, I'm going to go hard. I'm going to make the most of it. So there's a little bit of cat and mouse in it, but that's the grey that every player works in. So Tom Hawkins takes that mark, hands in the back, over the back, takes that grab in the first quarter. That sets the standard, sets the scene. He goes, right, I know how it's going to be adjudicated. I know that I can fudge it a little bit, and I could do an act that might be paid a free kick, but it hasn't. And I'll keep going like that. And his direct opponent goes, well, I can't give my back to Tom Hawkins anymore, even though I'd prefer to play in front. I can't give my back to him in the next contest if that's going to be adjudicated that way. Players are making constant adjustments in their mind, lessons from what happened a minute ago that they take into the next minute. So that's what you would have seen in Ginnivan. But that's a professional way to see it. And yeah, sometimes it does take a little while to recalibrate and work out exactly how you're going to approach the same situations in the next contest.
How would life be at a footy club at Manly today, Bucks? So the club has come up with the concept of their pride jumper. They unveil it yesterday, and 7 players go to them and say, I'm not playing. We're boycotting the game on Thursday night. And now it's the national conversation all the way to the Prime Minister's office.
So before you need to give me more information.
Yep.
Boycotting it on what basis? Are we aware?
Religious grounds.
Religious grounds. And what is their heritage? The 7 players, are they Islanders? Are they devout Catholics? Are they devout Muslims?
That's more than I don't have the absolute specifics on that, but it's accepted that on their objection is on religious grounds. They don't feel they are able to wear this Guernsey because or their jersey
on religious grounds.
Yes,
mate. See, there's more than 2 sides to the story, but when you consider this, it's about This is about acceptance. Like I think. Where we're moving towards is acknowledgement and acceptance of different ways to live and different ways to express yourself and different ways of being. And I love that concept. Like to celebrate difference and diversity is something that I've learnt to appreciate more in my last 5 to 10 years, I reckon, of life. But it was something that I was fairly ignorant of early. But if we are going to celebrate difference, well, then we have to acknowledge and accept that there are going to be people with a difference of opinion, that this doesn't represent me, or this is not something that I feel like I want to support. So it's a vexed issue in that regard. And it is a fundamentally moral issue, because you can't say, yeah, we celebrate diversity and we celebrate difference of opinion, but not yours, because it's not diverse enough. So that's about where my philosophy ends, and my comments around this, because I don't think that you can have an opinion in this space that everyone can buy into. And I think that's fair as well. I think people are entitled to have their opinion. So I think that the Manly guys that are putting their hand up and saying, I'm not comfortable here, I think they should be listened to and heard and acknowledged. I don't know where you go from here, because you're trying to put all of these opinions and perspectives and ways of life into one entity, into a team or into a club. And that's going to be more and more difficult as we go forward.
It would be an impossible day to navigate as a coach, wouldn't it? So the front office is one thing, but how would you? So the whole idea is to bring a team together.
Yeah.
And you've just got a team that fractured.
Yeah, well, it used to be that the coach's opinion was everyone's opinion.
Yes.
So coaching was easy, when it's just whatever I think goes, whatever I say goes, and that was easy for a coach. Now he's got to sit there. He's the last bloke, and he's got to assess this, assess that. But then you got to pick the times when you go, nah, I'm pulling out the coach card, and this is the answer. And I reckon that's happens less and less. But if you don't do it, well, then what are you doing? You're just going along with everyone else, and that's not leadership.
Leon Cameron, he's great listening on Crunch Time at the moment. It's fantastic to get his views straight out of the box. So the genesis of that conversation, Bucks, was an interview with Alistair Clarkson on Friday at a Melbourne United lunch, the theme of which was developing a championship culture. And he spoke about what he'd learnt out of the States, which was that greed and money will kill culture. And then obviously the running parallel to that were the reports about $1.6 million, which he was quite scathing of. But I'm just interested in the greed and money can kill culture piece.
Well, it's really interesting to go to the States to come back with that, because it seems like there are levels up from where we are as a nation in our sporting endeavours. I feel like we're more team orientated than individually orientated than, say, an NBA or an NFL. But clearly team culture is crucial. The locker room feel is, and the buy-in from every individual, whether you're the top paid or you're a rookie, is crucial for team success. And that's what the culture that we speak of. I think salary caps or pay, whether it's in a playing group or in a coaching group, can be inequitable. But if it's accepted or not known, then you can still be fine. But eventually, if that inequitability is acknowledged and not accepted, then that's where issues prevail. And it might be as simply as an underperforming, high-paid recruit who's come over, and everyone, like the media might drop on that, but then you look as a player in the locker room and go, well, he's underperforming. Not only is he underperforming, but he's not buying into the team. He's just taking his cash and he's going home. He's not tipping into the group. He's not tipping into others. He's not helping anyone get better. So it's not just money and greed. It's money, greed, and selfishness, or money, greed, and a lack of investment in the team ethos and endeavour. But yes, it generally has its genesis in remuneration of some sort, or reward, or status, and that's a slippery slope.
Did you have a concept that you'd contemplated around rewarding the team environment?
It's funny, in my playing days, I was one of the better, clearly one of the better paid players. I assume. I never looked at I didn't know what other people were being paid. And in a locker room, it's still one of the unspokens. It's like if you're old man, like when I used to go down to the old man to the TAB, if I asked him how much he put on the horse, it was like, that is not something that you ever ask me. Like, that is not acceptable.
Yep.
Like asking or talking about, hey, what are you getting paid this year? That's not a question that gets asked. So everyone's, what they're getting paid is only speculation in media. It's not a conversation that happens in locker rooms. I was well paid, and I reckon I was disproportionately paid for parts of my career in an underperforming list, and I reckon that made it that is not the way that you want to set up your salary cap. When I became a coach, one of the things that I wanted to do I didn't spend a whole heap of time on salary. I didn't really want to know what guys were on because I didn't want to be judging them on. You don't want to know their triggers first and foremost because you don't want to affect selection.
Yep.
Even if it's back of your mind. And you don't want to end up sort of judging guys on what they're getting paid. So I always push that to the side. A concept I did have to bring equity back and contribution to culture and performance was to clip the last 10% of everyone's wage and to put that in the kitty, and then to have the coaching group along with the BNF be rewarded, to have players rewarded as the coaches viewed each player's contribution, and even for a coach's award or a leadership award or best teammate, those awards to have a financial support mechanism to be rewarded for your contribution in different ways to the environment and to performance, rather than just having individual contracts. I think it's a great concept. So you pay 90% of your cap, but there's 10% that's up for grabs, and and I would even have the on-field leaders I would have the on-field leaders responsible on a panel to decide where that money would go.
Yep.
And I still think that there's a capacity for that, because then you get rewarded for your contribution in that given year. It might be a guy who's been injured, who gets his contract clipped in half or something because he's been injured, but goes out and just makes everyone better. And you might want to, here's a reward for, this is what we want to gift you at the end of a season for your contribution to the environment. You can use it in all sorts of different ways, and it can be abused, but I'd love something like that to come in.
So in a $14 million salary cap, you'd have a pool potentially of $1.4 million.
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is.
Maybe it's just 5%.
Yep.
But I think in the end, so if you're a player who performs above expectations, generally you're rewarded potentially in your next contract. But sometimes if a level is set, it's pretty hard to break out of that strata. So potentially, the one-off reward payment, and I think that if it comes to the right people in the right doses at the right time, you can't begrudge that. If the whole environment buys in, and this is where leadership decisions are crucial, financial or otherwise, if the group believes in it and sees the reasons that it's been, or that status has been given, or that reward has been given, or that acknowledgement has been given, or even that whack has been given, if it's consistent with the way they view the environment and the contribution to purpose and performance, it just makes it pops everyone. So one person might get rewarded or get a pat on the back, but everyone feels like, no, that's right. And when my time comes, I'm going to get the pat on the back. Or, he got a kick in the ass, he deserved it. And if I did the same thing, I'd expect it. So it's sort of making sure that you're consistent in your own environment.
Yeah, what an interesting thought. Bucks, good to see you. Thanks for spending the first hour of your birthday with us.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for my chocolate cake. Thanks,
Enjoy
Claire.
the day.